All right. Well, I am indeed from not Australia. And thank you for inviting me, by the way. Appreciate it. It's good to always see people like yourselves, people who are passionate about F#. So we have been doing F# based stuff for ages. I think we were one of the first, if not the first company in the whole world doing F# stuff, applying F# commercially. This goes back to 2004. I don't know how many of you have used F# around then, but it was a pretty small community. I think we had a few people to start out with, and then Don had at Microsoft Research this project going, and we were getting the first jobs to actually use in a commercial project. And it was quite an exciting time to work with those early bits. So a long time has passed, over 10 years since then, and I have a small company called IntelliFactory, where we do basically anything that is related to F#, but a good core of our business is to work on developer technologies around F#. So here, I'm going to talk about 3 different things we have done. One is UI.Next, and WebSharper and CloudSharper. And then all these 3 pieces are supposedly making a coherent story for newcomers or F# developers or professional F# developers. And we are hoping that this might entice some people to actually try these out. So just a quick agenda. I think how much time do I have just to clear that off first? About an hour?
Yeah.
So we have 1 hour each.
Yeah.
So we go around until 9. It's gonna be a long time. So if you guys get tired of me, just shoot me down, or you know what? It's even better to ask questions, because then I don't just talk about the stuff I have on the slides, but instead we can get some interactivity going, and I think it's gonna be better. But I'm gonna be showing code anyway. I don't know how well you can see all the small font that I have, but we can talk about developer stuff. But I hope to show you some of CloudSharper actually, because that's going to be the thing that kind of joins all these other technologies into this coherent story that I'm going to present today. And indeed, the first thing I have on today's agenda is going to just a very quick look at CloudSharper, some of its features, and basically walking through these features, and just showing you how you can get started with one of the examples from the WebSharper website, how you can plug it into CloudSharper and get it going. And it's actually the getting started example in 2 minutes. This is what it's called on the WebSharper website, like the 2-minute sample. And it will take literally about the same time to get it set up and running in CloudSharper. And then we're going to show some other parts of CloudSharper, including the interactive web development part. I think it's kind of interesting. And by the way, I will have the slides after the talk, so I'll pass it to Troy and George. And it will have some links in the bottom of some of the slides, and you can just go to those links and you get the same code, because CloudSharper is about basically sharing code bases, and even entire projects between F# people. All right, and then I'm going to do what I have proposed in the title of this talk, do some reactive development with UI.Next. I actually am going to present one of my standard examples. I beefed it up a little bit, but the point here is how much you can deliver in just a couple hundred lines of code. And I could have written like a whole shopping cart if I wanted, but this is a very minimalist shopping cart, but it uses reactive patterns from UI.Next. So we're going to look at that plus UI.Next. I'm going to present some other examples, all these in CloudSharper, and then we'll talk a little bit about what's coming up. Sounds good? Any questions so far? Before? No questions, okay. So this is going to be the first thing that we're going to check. So let's jump into this. But before I do, so I don't have to actually show this in CloudSharper, because here's a nice screenshot that has the main sections. I'm going to just briefly say where we should be looking when I'm presenting stuff. So up here there are 3 icons. These are the different screens, the different aspects of the development environment. So basically CloudSharper at the very first glance is a development environment, a web IDE for F#. It's much more than that, but I think it's going to be enough if you say it's a web IDE for F#. People have used maybe try F#, what classes out there. I think WebSharper is the only one really that is like almost able to do, you know, like almost real stuff. You can type stuff into interactive. You can even get smaller programs to run, but you can't get full applications. So CloudSharper, on the other hand, is basically project and solution based. So this is for larger stuff as well as small stuff. So you can do small scale, like 1-2 line snippets, F# interactive stuff, even interactive web development, which I will show, all the way up to full projects. And so these are going to be the different parts of the screen. So the first one is your dashboard, the second one is your IDE screen. This is where you have all your files, you can open them and so on. And then the third one, this is the deployment screen. This is where you can test your applications. Because this is on the web, obviously we're going to be working with the subset of F# applicable to the web. And the technology that bridges us from F# to the web is WebSharper. This is not a talk on WebSharper, but
can I ask a question?
yes,
so
please.
It's online F# development. So that means it excludes offline development.
You can do offline stuff. You can do offline stuff. I'll show you what CloudSharper does. You can do basically anything, but if you really want to do some interesting stuff, you will probably want to do mobile or web applications. But you can do thick clients as well, console type applications, even libraries. In fact, I'll show you the templates, and you can see that basically just like in Visual Studio, you have a whole bunch of different things that you can work on. We give you like starter projects as templates so you can get started easily in CloudSharper. But anyway, so back to the WebSharper bit. So this is WebSharper. I don't know how many of you have used this. This is an open source technology that we developed. It's on Apache. We have over 75,000 downloads in the past, whatever, 3 years. We don't even count the number of downloads anymore. We publish the binaries through NuGet. And there's a fair number of people who get it through NuGet, but most people actually get it from the download page here, because this actually has an installer that installs into Visual Studio, and you get all the templates and stuff set up, and all the tooling and all the extensions. So this is that button right there. Click that to download the VSIX, and then you install and you have it in your Visual Studio. You can do the same as Xamarin Studio, and you can just basically use WebSharper straight out of the box in CloudSharper. So here's a discover thing that takes you to CloudSharper. And all these other stuff, these are available components for WebSharper. These are basically libraries of different sort, like Dojo, jQuery UI, IIO Engine, HiMaps, HiCharts, Google Visualization, MongoLab, and so on and so on, PhoneGap. Some of these are small, some of these are large. Thousands of classes in one, and in another you may have 50 lines of JavaScript. So these extensions provide a bridge from F# to JavaScript to those different JavaScript libraries. So when you download this, let's say, WebSharper.OAuth, this is actually going to make you able to access OAuth related functionality from F# over the web into JavaScript libraries, or Protobase or whatever. Some of these are visualization libraries and they're quite stunningly nice. So if you go to the examples, there's a whole bunch. There's like 50 or 60 examples you can check out. We have so many that we even have other people from the community writing sites that collect WebSharper snippets. So there's Taha, a guy from Tunisia. He has a nice WebSharper snippet site. It's not yet linked on this page. This is an older version of the website. We're already rolling out a new one, and that will have the link. But this has like a couple of groups of examples. Like byAdam.js is also a game development library. So you can go into this, and this will take you to another page, which actually has from 1 to n samples in a unified page with the source code that you can download from GitHub or Bitbucket, depending, and then some links on top. So this actually is an example that gives me a cube, and then the other one is an animated torus, and this is like loading a scene of some sort, which might take a while, and then we get some initialization phase going, and then you get this graphics, and I think you can move it or do something else, kind of spin around like this. So this is just 3 examples, and if I went to the source, you would see that they are like from 10 to 100 lines of F# code, but it's all F# code, and all the interaction to do this is done through Babylon.js, this JavaScript library. So basically we have a proxy or a a stub or an extension, as we call it, for WebSharper to be able to talk to Debian.js. And likewise, we have a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm not going to show you the high chart stuff because I'm sure you guys have all seen it. The Reactive is a nice one. This is another game engine, or more like a graphics engine. You can do very high-profile graphics applications. I don't know what we have because these were mostly developed by interns that we have at the company. You know, some basic stuff like this. I think it's probably like 20 lines of F# code. Let's just look at the code. Yeah, this is the code. In fact, the bottom few lines are basically just set this and put it into this embedded application to post the different samples. So we're probably looking about this much code, up 20 lines to get this going, and we have a globe. And it responds to my mouse movement, so it kind of has this nice feel. And we have flamingo, which you can rotate, auto-rotate. These are very just silly examples. Sometimes you need to interact with the keyboard, so we have like a maze like this. But this is, yeah, there, you can check out the source. So I'm just showing you some examples, and just want to give you an idea about the different types of applications you can develop, and hopefully you will walk away with the idea that you basically can develop any kind of web-based application using WebSharper. We have done and taken a huge amount of work into bridging into these different JavaScript libraries and bringing them into F#. So you can be if you wanted, you could even bring Angular, JS, and things like that for WebSharper. But there's no point because we have a type-safe abstraction that are very similar to, like, for example, Angular. We actually do type-safe Angular-based development using UI.Next or Piglets. So if you're interested in the theory, we have published these in academic conferences. We'll have a website up that have links to these different papers, and you can check them out if you are like more academically inclined. So these are technologies that have a theoretical background, not just some crazy hacks that companies put together like Angular and so on. And the reactive library that we have, this UI.Next, is probably on par with anything like React.js or things like that. So it's pretty cool stuff, except we use F# only. So like the UI developer in a company working on these reactive applications would have to just use nothing but F#. They would not have to write a single line of JavaScript. So anyway, so here's UI.Next. Before I go into that, so the basic samples are here. We have the basic, we have HTML5 samples, we have form abstractions. These are some of the things I mentioned: piglets, formlets, flowlets, sitelets, and so on and so on. They are the theory behind WebSharper. So WebSharper is not just an F# to JavaScript translator. It's probably about 15–20% of the core of the source code for WebSharper. And it's 75 to 80% these abstractions that we have provided. These make you a better programmer because they allow you to write UIs, web forms, entire websites, and represent them as F# values. And in the type system, you get all kinds of guarantees. I can take a formlet that composes different sub-formlets, and the result from the form is it gets back to me in a type-safe value as an F# value, and I don't have to work anything about like massaging, dictionaries of string key value pairs that I get back from a post. I can just work with type-safe F# values, which makes it a lot better. This is so much power that I think people have a hard time understanding, so I'm not going to talk about these. There are examples here, and then the mobile examples, we have basically most of the major mobile JavaScript libraries like Essential Touch, jQuery Mobile. These are just the ones that we have samples for. There's more extensions that actually are mobile development related. And then these are other extensions: Candle UI, D3 is a nice graphics library, Big Maps, and XJS. Some of these are pretty large. So like the Sencha type provider. Sencha is a commercial software from Sencha. If you do something like, and all the samples can be tried live. So if I go here, we will load up XJS eventually, and then this is just a small example that makes me, or enables me to populate a list and edit the details here. But the nice thing, so you have to read this info panel here. The point of this is that I can use Sencha Architect, which is a busy big UI designer tool, You know, like in Delphi, you could drag and drop like forms, web forms, or in Delphi's case, just normal thick lines. But in this case, you can use Sench Architect, which is a very nice JavaScript UI designer. You can take the output of that, and we have a type provider that reads that and swaps it out and turns it outside, and basically exposes the functionality, the different controls, and everything through F# identifiers. So you basically have access to the internals of a Sench Architect project. And you can bind event handlers to a button. So you put everything together. It's just really easy, drag and drop. It could probably take 30 minutes to design a very nice application, like an internet bank application with several screens and whatever. And then I take that through the type provider and I start binding to the different controls, event handlers, and so on to put the application logic, and all that is in F#. So the UI in this case is in JavaScript designed by Sench Architect, or through a Sench Architect, but all the code base behind it is basically F#. And here's a short example, and at the end, well, I don't want to get lost in this, there's no point. So this is just so much power. We have a couple customers that had been our customers simply because of the Sench Architect integration that we have. This is only one of the components out of the 50 or 60 components we have. So some of these extensions are really, really doing a lot of work. All right, and now I'm going to go back to UI.Next, which is this extension here, and I already want to go away. This thing doesn't want to go away. Okay, now. So it also has a website, and it has a bunch of examples, and then the examples run here, and it's not very styled. So for example, here's a very simple reactive thing. It says, I have a text box, and whatever I type into it should be reflected underneath, echoed as a label. So, you know, it's like one of the smallest reactive applications you can develop. And then there are other examples here that are being transformed as you type. There are things that do different things like managing a set of tasks. And then you can say, I'm done with this, or I want to remove that. And then once it's done, I remove that as well. Phone examples, editable person lists. So basically, if I do this, then we see that here the list has already updated. And this actually this probably represents one of the hardest problems in reactive applications. You not only have one thing that changes, which you want then to have an effect on a UI. So basically, if you say, here's my UI, and then I have a model that it's actually operating on, and the model can be populated with data from a data source. So if through the UI you change the model, you want to propagate the changes back to the data source, or changes vice versa from the data source back to the model and back to the UI. You want it all automatic. This is what we call a reactive DOM being produced from a reactive model. And this is what UI.Next is about. So here, I don't just have a single text box that corresponds to a place on the UI. I have a collection. So this is a data type, some kind of a structural data type that is a collection. And parts of the collection, this is indeed a collection of records with 2 fields each. And if I make, so this is my model, and if I make a change in one of the entries, in one of the fields of that record, we will have a visual effect. And UI.Next basically manages that what is the smallest amount of work that needs to be done to propagate the change back to the UI. Yes?
What's the difference between what you're describing and what's commonly termed write-back within a SQL? So say if I'm in a SQL environment,
Okay.
I can put information through UI. I can just basically write it back, and it runs the stored procedure. If I Java code stored procedure,
Right.
it basically gets that information, I put it in the front end, and essentially writes it back to the tables.
Right. So this is basically separate from the underlying technology that you use on storing the data. So in your case, with a SQL database engine, you basically are limited to SQL.
Sure.
It's very nice because it provides you pretty much the same functionality. Not exactly, but it's one of the ways to store the data. But if you have another data source, or you have, I don't know, like a web service through which you obtain something, this acts as the bridge. And remember, so this is a reactive change propagation library. It tells you when things change, and then you can tell it how to propagate the change if it's not the default strategy. By default, we manage a model, and the model is connected to a data source and to the UI on the other end, and that's all we manage. And for most applications, that's fine. In your case, if I wanted to use a SQL database engine, that would be simply my data source to UI.Next, serving a UI. And this way, I could funnel all that data, but could have just nothing but F# code for my application. I don't need to write anything else. And as we will see, UI.Next actually allows to have all these descriptions about what changes and how things are reacting in a very nice and concise manner. So I'm not going to go through all these examples, but basically, I mean, as you can see, this is without the desire to be stylistically or good-looking. So this is a small application like a calculator. I think what we should do now is look at the main example that I prepared. And I'm going to skip the sections about what the different CloudSharper features are, because we're going to be seeing them anyway through this example. So remember, we were here. Yeah, so we started with a quick agenda and we said, okay, let's look at online development and first look at CloudSharper. So I think you missed this part. So this is the online environment I'm going to be using. It's basically a way to write F# code on the web. So let's do that first. Let's set up. Let's get that set up. So yes.
So is this like a client-side framework? It's not like the WebSharper server.
So there's a web framework behind all this. It's called WebSharper. WebSharper is the JavaScript or F# to JavaScript translation. All these formalisms like formlets, flowlets, sitelets, pagelets, piglets, etc. Those are all the power productivity things that we give you. And if you use those, you get to have very nice, concise applications, all in F#, and they can be client-only, client-server, or they can be just server-side components or web services. So you can have a full range of all these different types of applications. And one of the main core strengths of WebSharper is that it's one of those few frameworks that are client-server web frameworks. So this is not just blindly translating F# to JavaScript. It's actually going to give you, from an F# code base, a full application that you can deploy. And we have deployment options for a whole bunch of things, from moving containers to IIS. You can run them on Linux machines and so on. And actually, CloudSharper, this whole IDE, is written in WebSharper. So pretty much anything that our company does is using WebSharper. And since WebSharper is all F#, we use nothing but F#. So we write nice big web applications in F#. We don't do ASP.NET. We don't write JavaScript. We just write F# code. And we have, I think, a pretty small code base for most of our projects, and we have over 270 projects. So I think one of the largest F# code base worldwide is ours. Yes.
Does the WebSharper cover 100% F# or is it something?
Yeah, so it covers the F# core libraries. It covers some of the .NET core libraries and most of the F# language. There are some corner cases and also corner cases from the .NET perspective, things like reflection and stuff that we don't have proxied, as we say. So a proxy basically is a WebSharper thing that turns a .NET library or a class into something that can be translated to JavaScript. So in a way, you have to give an implementation to everything, every library, core libraries, F# libraries, and so on, for JavaScript output. And we had done all that work. And for most of the F# language, all the core F# libraries, and some of the .NET libraries. So you can take an existing F# program and just with a few annotations like this is JavaScript, this is JavaScript, this is JavaScript, I'll show you the code what it looks like. You can get something working for the web. So for example, we have a couple guys from Microsoft Research that have used WebSharper for migrating some of their thick clients written in F# and C# to use, they migrated these to the web using WebSharper. And it didn't take that long, but it would have taken a lot longer to write those originally as a web application. So anyway, so here's a CloudSharper, and I'm just explaining this, what you have to do to get this done. So you have to, of course, sign up, and it basically means a username and an email, I think, or maybe a password as well, and you can already log in, so I have done that. And by the way, before I log in, I showed the blog. Just released a nice version yesterday. We'll see this soon, what it means. And so basically the blog, as you can see, every 1 or 2 weeks, there's a release, and we have gone through over 30-some releases already. We have 4-digit releases like 0.9.20.2. So we have had, I think, over 35 releases so far in the span of about a year, I think, or something like that. So I think we are now nearing the 1.0 release. And this is actually one of the apropos of why I'm doing this talk about CloudSharper. This is almost like, hey, here's CloudSharper 1.0 coming out, not just WebSharper 3. Yeah.
Because I haven't used it, so what's the experience like?
Well, let's see.
Or reverse engineering or whatever. Do you appear to be in F# or do you appear to be in JavaScript?
So you mean that the experience of using CloudSharper or WebSharper?
Say you're using WebSharper.
Okay.
And you're debugging. What does it feel like?
Well, I think it feels very good because I don't consider myself a web developer because I really don't know most of JavaScript. I mean, it really escapes me. I mean, some of these curves and craziness. I don't want to have to learn it. This was one of the reasons why I actually started WebSharper, because all the other guys on the team, they didn't want to learn it either, and we had some big projects to work on. And actually, I think it was already 2007, around 2007 when WebSharper started, where we developed these components so that we didn't have to use ASP.NET and JavaScript. We could just do all of our work in F#, and then this compiler would turn it into an application. And already from day one, we had this requirement that it had to work with server-client architectures. So
it's pretty seamless.
I would say that, just like when you talk to C# people about F# and they try F# and they go, wow, this is really awesome. And most of them actually don't want to go back to C#. It feels something like that when you have F# people trying WebSharper. Because, okay, so you do have to get through this one idea that you think that WebSharper is going to help you output a bunch of JavaScript, and then you look at the JavaScript code and you say, oh, this is nice or not so nice. If you're like on that level, you probably shouldn't use WebSharper. You should probably use something else. Because here we make web applications. We don't just output code. We want to give you the whole thing so that you don't have to manually do anything. You don't have to manually ever include any dependency for any JavaScript library. That's all managed as part of the compilation process. So I would say that the experience using WebSharper on any kind of a project, I think is pretty good. That's what we do on a daily basis. We have several projects running all the time, and all of our people are working with WebSharper all the time. So we eat our own dog food. And actually, it's a very fulfilling experience to see from small to large companies eat our dog food as well, and finding it good. I think that's one of the most fulfilling things you can encounter. Okay, so you sign up, you log in. This is probably the first thing you're going to see. And if you read, this says, okay, well, you're trying to use CloudSharper, but this requires you to install a code service on your machine. I was talking to somebody here. So this is a public website. It's cloudsharper.com. And when you sign up, we have coded this with 2 different directions in mind. One is that you sign up and you get a server-side remote resource which will compute all the code service functionality for you. Type checking F# code, compiling your F# projects, doing your WebSharper translation, and so on and so on. So this is what I call the cloud-hosted backend. The other direction we have is having all those services as a locally installable service. It puts like a mini cloud on your machine. And the whole idea is that for doing all these compiler services, you don't need a cloud because the resources required are fairly minimal. You actually can get by with a fraction of your own machine. So why would you want to incur the cost of having to go to the public cloud or a private cloud or whatever, and then a tiny instance working for you and then getting back with the result? Plus this has some security issues, like, you know, if I'm a company, I wouldn't trust my code base to be out on somebody's cloud. So this actually has everything that you're developing on your own machine or on your local corporate infrastructure. You can store this on one of your servers, and then all the people working with CloudSharper on a public website will still use your local resources. And that's the normal standard version of CloudSharper, which we also call the local component. This is the local mini cloud. This is an installable thing. If you don't have it installed, which of course we just registered, so this is what you see. It says if you run on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, follow these instructions. And CloudSharper, as you suspect, runs pretty much anywhere now. It was about a year ago when we first introduced or announced to the web that we have not only just the Windows support, we have CloudSharper running on Mac OS and Linux as well. And a lot of universities and, you know, people like in academia, they use this. There's a lot of people using Mac OS and then running CloudSharper as an alternative to Xamarin. And then a lot of people, most of the people we work with, they're also on Windows. So that's our most established backend. And these kind of always lag behind 1 or 2 versions. But I think this release, I had made sure yesterday, that the 29 also came for these. So anyway, so it says you need .NET 4, you need F# 3.1, and you need to download this component and you need to run it. That's all you need. So let's say I download it and I have to run it. So basically the easiest way to search for it is search for CloudSharper, and it says CloudSharper services, so I start that. This is a little component that initializes this mini cloud. It will put out some messages and it will say, yeah, I've started some servers and, you know, and I'm ready. So we're going to hide this away. I'm going to close this. Remember, this is a service, so it keeps running. In fact, it went up here to my tray somewhere. But now the thing is running and I can say, okay, well, now I just connect. And if I had run this prior to going to the website, I wouldn't see this. So this is just a nice way of letting people know, hey, you're going to run the local CloudSharper component. And once it initializes, it loads up all my workspaces. Remember, these are stored on my machine. But some of these workspaces are also synced into the cloud. So I have like 50-some projects here. A good majority of them are actually stored in the cloud. So I can actually use this machine, or your machine, open up, install CloudSharper, log in as me, and it will basically give me the cloud-hosted workspaces already, and I can work on them on your machine without having it on the machine. Of course, it will start on them first, so it will populate your local machine eventually. But you can basically share code, you can give a URL to other people for projects, and this is what we're going to do today as well. Okay, and so let's open one of our first apps. I think we should do the 2-minute example. Wait, so before, let me just say. So we were on this slide. We shouldn't rush because the 2-minute example is the next slide. I want to show you something here because I was talking to somebody and they asked, can I use FSI? You know, this is one of the first things that people will want to do, like newcomers coming to F#. Let's see how CloudSharper enables me to do that. So first of all, I can open, you know, workspaces, and I can go to deployment screens, I can create a new workspace, I can sync it to the cloud, I can do all this here. But if I click Control-Alt-F, or just simply go into the menu, once I'm on this screen, I can say View Interactive, it gives me this resizable window. It's not that much fun. It basically is empty, it doesn't do anything. But if I type something like 1 + 1, the first time it gets an input, it will start interactive. And once it starts interactive, you can basically now use this as FSI, so I can define functions, let foo of x = x + 1, and so on and so on. And I can just interact here. So I'm going to save you some trouble. So in the documentation, there are several pages of documentation prepared for newcomers. First of all, when you start a new project, you get this Welcome to CloudSharper thing. This explains what is a project, what is a workspace, how do you actually put something into a workspace, how do you compile it, how you deploy it, it's all explained here. And we have an interactive window, we have WebSharper on the fly compilation. So maybe let's just run this. This is 2 lines of code. I don't know how, can you read this at all? So maybe like this. So this is the code we have, right? This is 2 lines and it has a run button. So it says, this is all WebSharper stuff. So this is a special operator that binds to a DOM node, an event handler, and this is the text of the event handler. So this gives me a button that says click me, and once you click it, it will do a JS alert that says clicked. Very simple. And remember now I have run it, so I have this part of my screen. So I just, it's like the highlighting text and Alt-Enter in Visual Studio. It sends all that stuff in here, and it sent it, it interpreted it, and it responded. It says, now you have a value, which is of type quotation of expert of element. Don't worry about what it means. This is a WebSharper element, it's a DOM element. We have a quoted expression value of that. But this type is able to be represented and viewed within CloudSharper as WebSharper content. So this already is turned into the actual web representation through WebSharper of that 2-line code. So it says click me, and I got the button, and if I click it, I should have the clicked JavaScript thing. So the documentation basically has a whole bunch of stuff, like it has these, let's say here's a charting example. 15 lines, it loads up something, and then boom, it charts 2 things. Line chart and column chart combined with some legend. So if you go on and on, there's a whole section here about charting. Let's go with this. So we use these crazy charts, they can be turned on and off. So you can do charting. It basically is like FS chart, about the same capabilities, a whole bunch of different chart types, a whole bunch of different, representations of values that can be piped into these chart types, and it has all that built in, and all you have to do is just write some F# code, and you get that turned from F# to JavaScript by WebSharper through the integration with WebSharper, and then you get it to run here. So this is your F# interactive, web F# interactive, and you can do things that have web representations like graphics or interaction with event handlers and so on and so on. I actually opened this new section from the documentation. It's called Interactive Web Programming. I want to show you this just a tiny bit. So you can have like, okay, give me a div that has some text, and then you can say run this. And now it has, here's my placeholder. And I can bind events, and I can do all kinds of stuff. I'm not going to do that now. But here's a bit more elaborate. Okay, so here's a way from the interactive to actually call the server. So if you define RPC functions, this is special annotations, you probably don't see anything of that, right? So we have something like this. Some functions are RPC and some functions are not. You can guess that these will sit on the server in the hosted FSI. So when you have a UI representation, like an element, a quoted expression of an element, turned to a web representation, it can call into the RPC hosted in FSI. So you can do like interactive client-server testing, and then of course once you have tested all your stuff, you can copy and paste the same code into a WebSharper application template, which we haven't even looked at, and you can have a full-fledged application. So this is the interactive development part. I'm not going to run this because I think this one is better. So this is like a 50-line F# code, and the heart of it is this div node. So there's some canvas-related stuff in the div node. It has some attributes, and then it has an element, which is defined basically as a two-dimensional HTML5 canvas element, which has a border of 1 pixel, and it listens to certain event handlers on mouse down, on mouse up, and so on and so on. So let's run this. So it's running in this tiny little screen here. And basically what it does, it implements, like I can drop my mouse. So that's the end of this whole interactive part. And the only other thing I want to show you, this is just straight from the documentation. You don't have to do anything, I don't have to share anything. You just have to go to the website to get access to this. We have full NuGet integration in FSI. So in FSI you can type some stuff and say, download this NuGet component, open it and then do something. So here's a small, this is 15 line again. So this is all of our code. So what we do is, we do look at the install package F# data, one of our favorite packages. We reference it, so this is an F# interactive session, so we need to reference it. Then we say, oh, get the World Bank database context, pick up 3 random countries, UK, US, France, and then do a chart for each. So for each country, do an indicator school enrollment tertiary percentages, map it to whatever, and then put a line graph out of it with some legend with the country name. And then do this for all 3 countries and combine them into a single chart. This is what the chart being combined does. And then basically run this. So I'm going to run this. It will take a little while because it has to go out to NuGet, get F# data. Using F# data, go out to the World Bank database, get the schema information, compile on the fly on my machine right now, and using that, run the code that I have. And here's the tertiary enrollment for the 3 countries. So the cool thing with, the not so cool thing is I can't get to the title bar, the pop-up window. But what I can do here is I can say, give me the previous command that was executed. I don't need to install this thing anymore. And let's say I pick, hopefully Australia is here, and just do the same thing. Compare Australia. And now you see a different chart, but this is Australia.
So is that running on the client or on the server?
It's running on my machine right now.
I mean, what I meant to say is, okay, so, I mean, it would be, this F# code you've got, that would be, is that converted to JavaScript and it's running in the browser? Or is
Well,
it
most of
something
it is, most of it, because you do have a representation in the web canvas. All that is JavaScript.
Right.
But the data behind it is obtained through a server-side component from the World Bank database. It's not a server-side component that I have to host. This is not RPC running in FSI. This actually is going to a web service, picking up the data and charting it, and all that is client code only. So this happens to be just nothing more than JavaScript. But the fact that I have this interactive session running, I can do all kinds of other things, including RPC. I could even simulate my own server, contacting another web service, fetching data, doing something with it, and passing it back to the client. And a bunch of other things. Yes.
Is it very sensitive to the browser version?
I did notice that on Firefox, some of these icons don't show up properly. I think that's because, so we use a background position CSS thing, which doesn't somehow work in FF Firefox, whatever version. But it works from IE8 and up. It works in all the Chrome, it works in Opera, it works pretty much in all the modern browsers. All this stuff. And some annoyances like the icon, yeah, it might be very broken in some of the browsers. But I think the whole thing as one, web application just works anywhere, because we have people using it on Macs, so it must work on Safari. People using it on Linux, so it works with Linux browsers. So I think it's pretty stable. Yes.
So what's the default charting library?
Here we use Dojo charts, but we want to get away from this because what we want eventually is being able to tell FSI to this session to save itself so I can share it with somebody. And to give a URL to this, with this being JavaScript and some stuff like, like these are actually like, this is HTML.
Yeah.
And what I would like is that the charting library gives me an SVG or some encapsulated format for the whole thing, whole output.
Yeah.
But this Dojo thing actually gives me HTML, which of course for us, it's okay because we already have a way to show HTML. But it's not very nice to save this as a transcript because it involves dynamic elements. So we will eventually probably convert this to SVG, and then when you save it as an offline session, you will get just an HTML or a link that points to one of the files in your workspace, and then you can share it with other people.
So if I want a more advanced charting options, like say I want to plot confidence interval, error band around the line.
You can, okay, so this is Dojo charts. All the extensions I showed you before I started with the CloudSharper bit on the WebSharper website, like D3, 3JS and stuff, you know, all those JavaScript libraries. You can use all of them here.
Yeah.
In fact, let's do a demo of this. So let me just do a refresh, a page refresh, so we get the title back. Because, you know, it doesn't really like seemingly me with my finger moving the screen so much, because I pushed out this entire window. So I'm gonna just simply refresh the page. It doesn't, you won't lose anything. I mean, you will lose FSI, because that was a dynamic session. Now this gets another FSI. But it logs you in and you see the same workspaces. It's pretty robust as well. I can get the internet cut off. I can continue editing. And when I try to save, of course, it saves locally on my machine. And if I have a synced workspace that should be synced to the cloud, like a Dropbox thing, once I get internet, I can say, go back to the menu and say, sync it to the cloud, and it will just persist it into the cloud as well. But everything is on your machine and nothing is lost ever. In this particular local backend. Remember, we have the cloud backend, which of course you need internet access for running that. Okay, so let's do the jQuery UI lesson. This was my second example. Remember, we get the welcome tab at all projects, and now we open one. And this is just a single workspace that has an FSX file and a config file. So we can zoom this. This is my workspace right there. And because I have a packages config, CloudSharper automatically fetches all the dependencies for me. As soon as I open this, it will do a fetch. I can share, when I give you this workspace as a URL, the whole thing, including the packages. And that's actually driven by this file, CS, CloudSharper ignore. This says what files should be synced up to the cloud. And this actually has a clause that says don't sync up packages folders. So if I had this and I give you a link from it, you will have not have the packages, but because once you open it, it will automatically fetch packages based on the existence of packages config, you will get the same thing. And if you actually go down to the, I'm lost now. So, yeah, I mean, open this file and get going with the code. So the README basically has a similar story. It explains, so okay, so we are teaching several universities, in several universities, we are teaching F#. And it's a 2-semester course. First semester is F# only. Then we have a second semester where we have applied web programming in F#. And of course we use WebSharper, and we use CloudSharper to do both of the classes or courses. So students actually use this for their semester work. They turn in assignments using this. We're working on some components that enable us to auto-grade assignments, even notify students of their grades. So we don't want to really go into the fully automated direction, but we actually have a bunch of components that can do that. And we're trying to come out with this e-learning component. We have already tested it for almost 2 years now. 3 semesters we have been doing at 3 different universities in Hungary. And now we're partnering up with some foreign universities to use CloudSharper. Because this is like try F#, but it's for full-fledged web development, mobile development, F# development. It has FSI, it has everything you need. So some of the other features that are in the cloud-hosted backend, basically we alleviate the need to install anything on the student machines. So we can have a centralized server installation, which serves all the students in the classroom, for example. So we have all those already working. But anyway, so here, I'm starting a new FSI window. These 2 lines basically reference the WebSharper extension for jQuery UI, and then we open jQuery UI. And so far it says, okay, everything is okay. And now we can test these little snippets. Let's look at this snippet here. So, Jesus Christ, I hate Chrome. Okay. It doesn't like me trying to zoom it up. So it's a small thing. It says, give me a div and create a new accordion with these elements. Panel 1, panel 2, panel 3, with these as contents of those panels as an accordion in the jQuery UI terminology. So when I run that, this gets translated, and boom, we get this nice jQuery UI accordion with the 3 tabs, each with a header 1 that just says the name of the panel. And okay, well, so we try a dialog. Now this is crazy. See, the window went up. So this gives you like some canvas that has a button and then it opens a dialog. Okay, so much for that. So in fact, this was actually a class assignment in one of the web development classes. So here's another jQuery UI control. This is one of these slider things. Then we have a date picker. So the point here, why does it keep going up? This is crazy. Of course, you can just get rid of it. And then once you turn it back on, it comes back to the same position. And that's a bug. It should go back to the middle of your screen. But anyway, so this gave you a date picker, not in a very nice position. So you can see that this is an interactive thing. Just imagine the students or yourselves typing in these little mini components to get something like this. This is a part of the UI of your application that you might be working on. And here you're interactively testing them. I could have an RPC function driving the data shown here in the control. I could have validation against client-side, server-side data or whatever. I could have it all here. So this is what I call the mini interactive, small-scale interactive web development. And once you're through with this, you can put your projects. And now I think it's time to actually look at what kind of projects you can work on. You can have desktop projects. And guess what? This is the F# tutorial and the F# console application. Same thing as in Visual Studio. We have some common projects, which is just an F# library. We have web projects. This is the interesting bit. So they all use WebSharper, of course. We have extensions. An extension provides a bridge to a JavaScript library. So if you want to have now, I don't know, your new web application, you want, I don't know, XJS for its UI, then you need to bind XJS as an extension, which we have done already, of course. But if you haven't, you can do it yourself. The thing about this is, this uses what we call a WIG, which is the WebSharper Interface Generator language. It's an embedded DSL to describe JavaScript APIs. And as you can imagine, JavaScript is a little bit screwed up. Has all these craziness, sometimes about scoping, sometimes about other things. All those crazy artifacts are encoded in WIG. So you can use the embedded DSL syntax to actually describe just about any type of JavaScript library. Once you have done that, you can use this WebSharper extension, reference it in your project, and now you can talk to all those JavaScript libraries. Yes?
So the way can manually describe the library?
That's the easiest. Well, not the easiest. That's the default fallback option. We also have TypeScript declarations, and using a type provider, reading those into an extension. So if you happen to have TypeScript declarations, that's okay. But the thing is that TypeScript, because of its type system, it's a little bit weird. It's not exactly the type system of F#. So in TypeScript, there are things that you can describe, but they have different semantics. So in some very corner case situations, you may prefer to use WIG, and you will most likely find that whatever people have done for describing JavaScript APIs in TypeScript, they haven't used the strictest, most type-safe descriptions. So you get things like you have an API, and then some of the members, they actually take objects. Whereas in WIG, we can say, yeah, it takes an object, but it's either an int or a string. And you can not take anything else. I can express very delicate things, much more complex than that in WIG as a WebSharper extension. But anyway, if you want to suck in these TypeScript declarations, that's another option. And by the way, we also generate TypeScript. So everything you write as a library, a WebSharper library, we can output it in JavaScript, and we can also generate a TypeScript declaration file on the top of it. So you can consume the generated JavaScript library from TypeScript, but we wrote the library in F#. I could write you jQuery, probably wouldn't be a fun exercise, but I could write jQuery in F#. You could look at my F# code, and if you find a couple bugs, we correct it, we compile it, and then we get the JavaScript library, and a TypeScript declaration file on the top. And we can give that to JavaScript and TypeScript people, and they can happily code with our JavaScript library, but they don't know that it's all coming from F#. And imagine that I can write a couple lines of F# instead of 200 lines of JavaScript. So my productivity, depending on what I'm working on, can be really, really significantly better. We have full client-server applications. We have client-only, so HTML applications, and we have single-page applications. This is probably useful for mobile applications. So if you're working on SP8. But remember, when you open this, it's all F# code.
Sorry, just to go back to your jQuery UI example.
Yes.
So what if the underlying JavaScript library doesn't provide you an API to do certain things? So you have to get around using, say, JavaScript manipulate DOM. Say, for example, for whatever silly reason, I want the mouse, when it moves into the calendar, when it's the second last day of the calendar, I want something else popped out, which jQuery UI doesn't do it out of the box, but you can do it using JavaScript.
You can always say that, okay, well, in this case, this would be the delicate interaction between an existing JavaScript library, which in this case erects a logical thing around some things like calendars and so on. And it's not necessarily that you can actually tap into the output. But in a hybrid approach, you could say that whatever jQuery UI produces, I want to examine it as a DOM. I want to dig down to whatever node and find the node that you're referring to and turn its color to red. I can do that as a post step. I can express that using jQuery, which, as you can imagine, is bound in WebSharper. I can use jQuery, and I can write F# to do the jQuery logic, and then color this red.
So all the jQuery event, like ready event, is available in WebSharper.
It's available because we opened jQuery UI, which is an extension that we produced. You could have produced it. Anybody could have produced it, and you can post it online. You can put it on Nuget, and people can find it and use it in their WebSharper projects, and a lot of people do that. But in this case, I think we generated jQuery UI, the extension. At least we generated the larger extensions, like Sendshot Touch. We're not going to write it by hand. So instead of using by hand Wig or TypeScript declarations, we actually have an F# program that reads through the whole JavaScript library, picks up the documentation annotations, and then generates an API from that, an extension from that. So we do that for a bunch of extensions. Probably not for this one. I think maybe this one was handwritten because jQuery UI is fairly small. It's pretty big, but it's fairly small compared to the others. Okay, so this was one project. Let me jump back to here, so just so I know where we are. So I've gone through this. So this is interactive. There's all kinds of stuff I can do with the IDE itself. I can, work in FSI. I can work in there's a console thing too. And console is kind of like in Linux. Why does it go there? Let me refresh again. I promised not to zoom the screen anymore. I don't know why. So by the way, this UI uses Dojo. We used a couple other things before, but Dojo has some fairly lightweight controls that we needed. In particular, a tab set that can be scrolled. It's pretty difficult to come by, so that actually is Dojo. But we're now in the process of replacing most of the UI with just HTML5. So it's really slick and fast, even on mobiles. So now I'm back here, and I was just going to show you like what can you do with the layout of CloudSharper. So let's say we just create a new workspace, and then it drops me into the IDE. I can create a project. I can put a project in like this, new project, and I can select whatever I want. I can give it a name, create it, and compile. In fact, let's do that. So here's like a. I don't know if the jQuery mobile application, I haven't updated that for ages. Maybe this is totally out of sync. But so we created it, and if you observe, a little icon appear. These are the different views of this left panel. I can view the help system, and then open at any time new parts of the documentation. Like dealing with if-fields, that's all build system. It was such a failure to start. You should have just used fail or something else. But we have a very similar F# way of describing build logic. It's actually not too bad. In fact, we use IntelliFactory build for all of our internal projects, like 200 some projects we are managing with if build, and some CI system and so on. So anyway, so So, and then the second little icon is the file system view. This is what I have in my workspace as if I had viewed it from the file system. And then the little dot icon there is the .NET representation, in other words, the solution file, the solution view. This says I have a solution called test011, and I have this jQuery mobile application. It looks like it's missing a file. And then here's some logic of it. And as you expect, just like in Visual Studio, I can do things like, okay, open WebSharper, and I break, let's say, sitelets, and suddenly I have all these red squiggles. And I have code completion. I can only complete the sitelets, and all the red squiggles go away. So I have all this, just like in Visual Studio. In fact, we use FCS, the F-Sharp compiler service, just like Visual F-Sharp integration into Visual Studio. So we are about the same speed, because we're using the same code base. And when I do a build, all this junk is just like if it was MS build. In fact, it is MS build. That's a warning, by the way, not an error. It says build succeeded. That's pretty awesome. And then say deploy. I just had a deploy. It says, how do you want to deploy it? Well, deploy it as a small application, and here it is. And it's just basically a UI or a jQuery mobile application. Not very fancy one, but basically 3 different pages going back and forth. And what I can do, and this is what I wanted to show, is basically view things like, okay, here's an HTML file. You know what? Can I browse this? Sure. And then here's my application running in a window. And I can actually put this over here to the left side, and why is it not picking it up? Well, anyway, so this is now using this part of the layout. And I can do a bunch of other things. I can dock FSI here, and I can do development here, or I can keep things in a pop-up, and so on. So this is what the experience is like. I think it's fairly flexible. It's almost like Visual Studio, but it's on the web. Okay, and now let's move on. Yes. And we just hit these examples, and by the way, when I give you the slides, you guys can go to these, and if you have CloudSharper installed, you will see these workspaces populated on your own machine, and you can start playing with the code. Yes?
So the server that's running on your machine, it's literally serving the HTTP pages. I mean, just changing the host file locally and serving the pages rather than going to the cloud.
Yeah, it has a built-in web server that we wrote. It's based on OWin. And by the way, all the stuff you produce here, like if you do Control B, which builds the whole solution, and if you have multiple projects, it builds all the projects. The output of the WebSharper projects, depending on whether you have a sitelet or just HTML code, the sitelets can be hosted in OWin. So any OWin compatible container, including IIS. So basically you can almost, I think I can say we can run on any container,
So the
any major container.
The sitelet that is the one that we annotated RPC?
Yes, so the sitelet, well, we will need to go to the WebSharper website, but if you read the documentation, the whole point of how WebSharper works is by these annotations. You write F-sharp code, and on a functional or module level, you say, this whole thing is JavaScript, this whole thing is server-side, or just F-sharp code. And basically, the compiler, so we compile it using the F-sharp compiler, and then in a second step, we compile the DLL with the WebSharper compiler, and what it does, it will go through all the code units that are in the DLL, and find all the ones that are annotated as JavaScript, and then from their representation, it will output JavaScript for them, in a way that namespaces and modules are honored, so you can still have scoping all the way down to an identifier, and put this as a standalone library inside the DLL. And I have a bunch of these libraries for WebSharper projects. These are called WebSharper libraries. And one of the project types you can do is a WebSharper library in CloudSharper, and of course in the Visual Studio and Xamarin Studio extensions. When I have a bunch of these, and then the WebSharper compiler is compiling an application using these libraries, it will extract from the DLLs all these JavaScript code and manage them, either putting them in a particular folder and in the page reference that folder, or just basically through the actual server that is serving the sitelet, automatically do that same logic and extract on the fly, on demand. And you can basically pick And we even have things like in web config, of course, because we have ASP.NET compatibility as well. In web config, you can just turn one flag to like debug equals false, and all the things that the WebSharper runtime extracts from these WebSharper DLLs or libraries when it serves a web application, it will serve you the JavaScript code minified, and if it's debug equals false, it will serve you unminified. And we have source maps, by the way, as well, so you can debug applications in Visual Studio or anything that, not Visual Studio, but in your browser, you can see the source, the F# source when you look at your JavaScript stuff. So anyway, so this is the 2-minute example from the WebSharper website. Let me just show you the website so we know where we are. And you go here, and then in the Learn part, there is a whole bunch of descriptions, but here's the 2-minute sample. It's in the quick glance. And this explains the different things that I talked about from the very first app. This is the 2-minute example. This is what I have linked up on that slide. And you can run it with this button. So if you click here, it will take you to CloudSharper with this code embedded, and you can play, compile, and so on. And in Visual Studio, you can do these steps to get the application running, and you will see the same thing. And then we have like what kind of things are installed into Visual Studio, what kind of templates we have, and then WebSharper basics, working with markup. How do you do client-server applications? How do you do asynchronous communication between the server? Powerful abstractions, UI.Next, formlets, sitelets, piglets, and then going further doing mobile applications and using and bridging to JavaScript libraries and so on. This is like a little teaser of every major area. There's extensive documentation in these pages as well. But anyway, so this 2-minute example that I wanted to show is on this slide. So if you go here, you will get the 2-minute example. I'm not going to open it right now because I think I rather should pick up some speed. So it will give you the README, it will walk you through what you have to do, build it, deploy it, and so on and so on. It's just literally just 2 keystrokes to do a build, another 2 keystrokes to get it deployed. And then you have the application running. And you can modify the F# code, recompile, and everything. So it's all nicely integrated. The interactive web development with jQuery UI, this we did. You can also find it here on this particular URL. And this is actually the UI.Next reactive application that I wanted to show, and I think I should just jump into this before too long. So let me go back and find this. I think it's this one. And you guys, of course, have the link on your slide. So yes, so now it initializes, it sees that whatever files I checked out from this workspace constitute a .NET solution. So it initializes the solution view, and it detected that I have probably one project in this solution, a bundle project, and it has basically some client-side code, and it already picked up with IntelliSense and everything, so I can hover over and I see everything just like in Visual Studio. I can make changes, I can break code and everything breaks, I can fix things, just like before. So there's no time to really go through the gist of this. Let me just run this application instead, because this is a reactive application. And the way that it's reactive is imagine I have an inventory of notebooks, laptops, and so on. And I have this shopping cart that people can go to and add certain items to their cart. But in reality, my inventory changes every time somebody orders something. And I probably run out of some inventory. Sometimes the prices change. So there's all these external events. So when you see this, underneath, the Toshiba laptop price may have changed already. So of course, let's see what happens. So you say, well, add this to the cart. So now it says I added $569. You can change the quality, not quality, so the quantity. And you can see it goes up, it calculates the price. This is all reactive as well. I don't have to do any magic to say, if I push this, we calculate this part of the screen. It's all managed by UI.Next. And by the way, the full source code to this application is about 200 lines. This is the full source code, 217 lines. this is the part I'm not going to go through, but I will show you the gist, the essence. So I have my shopping cart model. This defines the types I need. It knows about products. Each has a code, a title, a price, and so on and so on. And then I have my store, which is basically a function of time, and it returns me a number of products that I have in my inventory. So if I look at the signature, it doesn't like to give me the signature. But anyway, so this is what it returns for me. And really, this is the point of this example. So I have products, and I have things that go into the cart. It's a cart item. Basically, I have a product code, and however many quantity I have, and in what order I want to show them. I even added that as a small little thing, but normally you don't care. Normally, this is the order of your chronological, when I put it into my cart. And here's the complicated bit. It's these 3 lines. I say, not only do I have an inventory that people can buy from, but I also have 2 different views of how they see what they have, or what I have and what they have in the cart. I can show them all my inventory using category or by category or by price. This is what I call the sort model. And then I have a variable which says it's sort mode, and it says first we initialize it to by category. And of course, later on, I'm binding a UI to this part of the model. And when the sort mode changes, the UI will automatically update. We'll get to that part soon. So this is one of the reactive bits. This is a reactive variable. It can do basically one of these 2 shapes. Not very interesting, is it? The more interesting part is the products available. This is a list. It's a collection in my model, initialized using a key in the product list, which is my code. So if I have two products with the same product code, I assume that they are the same. That's what this says. So this is the identity. And basically, I initialize that. Why can't I go on this? That's crazy. I initialize it by asking my store to compute my initial set of products. And this is the model representation of what the server returned as my products available. And then basically I also have another list, which is the items in my cart, and right now that's empty. So that's the model. And then in the UI part, I have all kinds of craziness. Well, first of all, notice that I have a module that says client, which is a typical notation for putting all the stuff that is client only. And you probably want to annotate JavaScript on the module, which means I could have gotten rid of these because they are redundant now. And after a couple of helpers, I basically define how do I want to render my products. And yes, I will have a div, and in the div I have another div, and then I have an H1 node that has the product title. And then in a paragraph I'm going to have this and this and this. Trust me, this is the markup representation of whatever we saw on the previous screen. This thing here, when we were running it. That is an item. This is what that code renders, but it's rendering using the HTML combinators in UI.Next, and those are these tags. Div 0 and so on and so on. So this is my UI. This is just to render a product. And of course, I have to give some variability about how I want certain things to show up. So the items to buy actually will look at this reactive variable that I have. First of all, you render a div node in a shopping cart mode, and then depending on the different 2-way display mode that I operate in, either by category or by price, it will render my products in some way. It actually uses almost the same rendering. The only thing that the first one does is it groups them by category, product family, whereas in the other one we sort by the product price, which is kind of what we expect when we sort by category or by price. And the rest of the logic is pretty much the same. There's some minor little differences with the clearing and so on and so on. But this is all what we need. And as you guess, for each product we call render product, which is the function we defined above, so we can save having to redo that. So these 20 lines give me the 2 different views of how I want to render the different types of shopping or items available. And then there is some code that puts these things on the top, and when I click the button, so there's sort by category, sort by price. These are the two selectors of the different rendering models. And so one sorts by the prices. As you can see, the prices go up. And the other one actually sorts by category, and then displays the category on the top. So this is what that function did. This one here, right? So the remaining bit is basically putting the rest of the application together. This is initializing the buttons and so on and so on. There's another bit. This is the shopping cart. This looks at the other reactive variable, which stores the list of the items in the cart, and then shows you that craziness on the right-hand side. I'm not going to go through that because it's pointless. What matters though is the very end. So when we put things together, we have a div, and then we have the items to buy, and then we basically put that this is a run by ID. It allows me to add this code, which may or may not have reactive bits, to an HTML template with a placeholder called products. So at the very, very top, when I look at this application, I have an index.html file as well, which is just this very tiny little code. But it has some placeholders, and here's products. So as you can see, I use Bootstrap. I have a row and I have an 8-to-4 split. And in the 2/3 I put the products, and in the 1/3 I put the cart. And that's what I'm binding to from the F# code file. And remember, this is still just a little over 200 lines. And that's where I establish that main screen. And I have some buttons, so when I do a checkout, I do a JS over checkout. When I have the empty cart, I initialize my cart to empty, so I clear everything. And I have the two buttons to basically do nothing, but change the presentation style from by category to by price. So it's a one-liners each. Yes, I have 5 minutes. So this basically is a reactive application that doesn't probably look very familiar to people who are doing, like, I don't know, React.js or, I don't know, some other JavaScript-based development, because this all pushes writing the UI parts and the model part and maybe even the data source logic into F# files. And basically, most of the time, this is a very nice and pleasant experience. And the whole concept is around these reactive variables and a reactive DOM bound to these reactive variables and managing all the dependencies that change through the variables and through lists of entities that have variables. And that's the hard part, actually. But it's all managed. Any questions?
In terms of time,
Yes?
if you do it through this while using any other code, what's the comparison next? How much time would you use doing through this?
You know what, when I wrote this example, well, I did have to think differently than if I had another set of tools and not this functional F# thing. I would have used a different approach to basically describe the problem. But when I actually did it in this particular way, it actually helped me to concentrate on where I needed to spend my time in. There are all these things like when an application has an update to show to the user. In the old time, you just rendered the same HTML with the part changed and sent it back to the client, and then you had this page refresh. And then Ajax came, where we said, okay, do the same thing, but only show me the change in this particular area. And now this is pretty much the same, but it doesn't involve the server anymore, because we let the client know how to manage what needs to be updated and how. What is the minimal subset of DOM operations that would update a change in my model. And connecting the model and using reactive variables and lists of reactive variables with UI elements that react to the changes in those model variables is basically the heart of this engine. And by me being able to concentrate only on that piece, like what happens, how do I display the items? I didn't have to worry about, and what if it changes? How do I update the cart? I didn't have to worry about that, because once I described how I want the shopping cart to be changed, if an item was shifted out or removed from the cart, only that item was removed from the DOM representation of the shopping cart, because everything was managed by the library. So actually it helped me tremendously. This is 200 lines, it probably took me 45 minutes to write. And what a shame, I think I've had this example in different forms, at least 3 times in different conferences, and I should really put some styling in. Because it would just be a single line to reference a CSS. And suddenly I would have like a professional looking application with the same F# code. Anyway, so I have a couple more minutes left. So this was basically the main example. So remember, we looked at just the whole thing, the CloudSharper experience, docking things here and there, doing interactive web development, reading off from the documentation, managing projects and workspaces, checking your dashboard and syncing workspaces up and down. And then we had the actual samples. So here's one. This is the 2-minute sample from the WebSharper website. Some Google visualization, doing a chart. This is like 25 lines. We had the jQuery UI, reactive development, or interactive development using a script, or you can just pick it up from the README. And by the way, you probably noticed that when I say README, the nice thing about this is we have full support for Markdown. So this, of course, is a documentation tab. This is a Markdown rendering, but I have access to the source code because it's sitting in my workspace. In fact, it's this file right here. So when I open it, I get the Markdown. I can make changes and I can render the document, and I can have the rendered view here. Or I can split the view and I can have both, and I can make edits. Let's make some edits. So I do some edits. And boom, it's here. So this is like very nice, you know, for scientific stuff. Very nice to share documents. Very nice to share code with a README or a lecture or a course material. And I could have also basically viewed in a browse mode this document, and I could have basically tucked it into the right hand or left hand side or whatever using the layout stuff. So there's a lot of things that there are a lot of things that are seamless here. So like Markdown, the F# interactive serving, not just F# interactive, but graphics and web stuff, charts, you know, server-side components that can be accessed as an RPC function. There's a whole bunch of stuff here that you just don't find in Try F# or your own thing, even in Visual Studio. It's very hard to get by. But here it's all presented in a nice web IDE. And we took that idea 1 or 2 steps beyond this. So we like to say, yeah, CloudSharper is not an F#, a web F# IDE. It's much more than that, but I think when we start talking to people first, we just present this side of CloudSharper. But I want to give you just a 1-minute brief overlook into where we are heading with CloudSharper. So like I said, I mean, some people are interested in using CloudSharper for teaching F#, or even in a company, when you have like people that want to learn F#. The other people that know F# already, they can prepare stuff like this, and then through CloudSharper, the whole education procedure can be a lot more effective. In fact, we are developing even commercial training materials over the web. We don't even have to go to the company. We do it all remotely, and we give them access to the material that we develop. So we have services like that. So we looked at the different web, reactive, and now what's the upcoming stuff? So first of all, we're doing a UI redesign. So what you see will change quite heavily. The idea being that we want to be more mobile friendly. So if I pick up my tablet, I want to be able to develop the same kind of applications. We're not probably going to be coding, but we have some other stuff like talking and coding via voice and so on. So some crazy ideas. We're going to have more templates, particularly for UI.Next. We have already several example applications which will be shared, and even new templates will be provided for people getting started with mobile development, web-based mobile development, using jQuery Mobile, SensuTouch, Form.js, Vim.js. Actually, as I talk, I'm just switching to another workspace that uses Vim.js. So here's a Vim.js application. So I just opened a new workspace. Yeah, this one doesn't really work. Why is it not working? Oh, because it's not. Okay, never mind. This is an older project. Yeah, I have. Some of these are like from August, and they still use the 2.x we wait until after the talk. But it's very easy. You just switch in and out into a new workspace and you get a mobile application. And we have a bunch of samples already. We are working already with these technologies. And so there are existing connectors. So people can develop in 50 to 20 lines or 50 to 100 lines some mobile applications and then integrate backend services to them, and then you get some nice mobile applications. And we have all these WinJS, so that's for Windows applications, but using the JavaScript path. And PhoneJS, Tangent.js, jQuery Mobile, and some others, they are actually JavaScript libraries to give you the look and feel of mobile applications. There's Framework 7 that gives you like an iOS look and feel and very nice interactivity elements. That's another component we are integrating. So that's coming up. So this is for mobile development. So we're not going to be, next time you see a talk on CloudSharper, you will probably see a lot more emphasis on mobile application development and how in F#, using 200, 300 lines, you can develop very effectively mobile applications and not have to worry about anything like JavaScript and integrating with other stuff, just all F# code. And then of course we have the cloud backend, so you don't have to install anything. That's coming up. It's already in a pretty good working condition. And then the biggest thing that is coming up is the extensibility. So we want you or anybody using CloudSharper to tailor CloudSharper to their purposes. You may want to do a visiting designer for something. You may want to have a new extension that allows you to talk to CloudSharper and get something done. Generate code, produce something, access to a type provider, a data source, and some other stuff. So all that is going to be coming through the extensibility. So we have a concept of plugins. They can populate menu items, they can change the layout, they can change the whole canvas of CloudSharper. We have custom editors to basically give you the ability to work with different types of files. Like you click on a PNG and suddenly you get an editor on the tab and then you can work and change the PNG. We can also support new languages. This is something we are remotely interested in because we believe that F# is the language of our choice. But we do see that a lot of people could actually benefit from this if they were able to use another language like, let's say, C#. So actually integrating C# into CloudSharper is not that difficult. So we can have the same kind of code assistance and even WebSharper integration. And we're more interested in the WebSharper integration, so I can tell you that right now it's coming. So WebSharper will be available for C#. Whether CloudSharper will support C# in the near future, that is a question. But in the longer future, why not? So all this is basically establishing that, hey, you can develop applications and you have such a nice web ID. And I said, well, we don't want to go in that direction only. But that's because we are implementing now what we call the CloudSharper applets. And basically, this is a special kind of an extensibility approach where we allow you to write a small plugin or like an applet, and we will give you the hosting, we'll give you all the access to the data, type providers and a bunch of other components we can give you right out of the box. And then you can, let's say, access your own data sources. Let's say I have a company database having people. I can access that and I can have a small application, like an intranet application, where I can develop it and host it in CloudSharper. And I can provide CloudSharper in two different ways. I can say, well, for developers, they should see the code of all my intranet applications. But for end users in my organization, they should just be able to run them. And CloudSharper will give you the hosting. So let's say you guys are all developers, you're developing all my intranet infrastructure, like intranet applications, an HR application to hire and fire people. You're doing, I don't know, some other tool. You write it all with CloudSharper, just like what I showed. And when you deploy, you get instant deployment. So when you compile and say, I'm ready, let's roll this out, you deploy, you just deploy. And the next person, let's say from the HR department, they go to a particular URL, something CloudSharper or something, they do a page refresh and they see the code change that you just rolled out. And because we can have access, so it all depends on where the local component is installed. It can be in the cloud or it can be on your corporate network. In that case, you can have access to private data sources. We already give you extensive charting and visualization capabilities. And on the top, we give you this ability that whatever application you're running, if the right rolled people are logging into the application, they can change the code of the application. Because this is an IDE after all. And that's scriptable interactive components and much more. So basically, I can write like, okay, this is like a totally last minute thing. I created a local database on my own machine. I use a type provider to get type safe access to the tables. Of course, I created orders and products and so on and so on. And with a single query, I picked up what's in my database in the different tables, and I put them in an HTML table, and I give you a chart of, let's say, my sales per month, my sales volume, and you can see how my orders went through. And this is all coming from the local database. It's probably, I think it's like 60 lines of WebSharper, but it's a WebSharper applet, or sorry, a CloudSharper applet, and when I put what we didn't see, and of course it's probably too late for that, is that you can customize CloudSharper for your purposes. And in this case, what I did is I embedded this application to my CloudSharper instance. So if I log in, I get this as a new tab every time I log into my CloudSharper. And you can imagine that this could be an interactive dashboard, you know, monitoring some stocks. It can give me some warnings and whatever. It can be my HR database. And of course, I don't want to see, let's say, the code, so I'm probably going to be one of the end users, but somebody else might be a developer and they will be able to actually change this application on the fly. So this is where we're going. And at the end, it's probably going to be more like a business intelligence thing, probably a stack of, you know, like data visualization, machine learning, and some other stuff that you can put together an address with F#. You can develop all those components in CloudSharper. You can host it as applications for your end users. So you have the whole enchilada. You can start a business literally by going to CloudSharper and start your business there, and have the whole thing running from the CloudSharper infrastructure. So that's coming up. And just to close, we have Fish. If you haven't heard, it's also written in WebSharper. It's everything you want to know about functional programming, events and questions and stuff, and there's a whole bunch of stuff. So thank you very much for your attention.